Josh Zepps joins us. He's a television host and radio broadcaster. He's a founding host and producer of HuffPost Live, and his podcast is We the People Live, and it is one of the most popular comedy news shows on iTunes. Josh, great to have you, man. How you doing?
Yeah, great to see you. I mean, what a night, right? I mean, this is the final implosion of the Bernie campaign. I'm not saying that I'm happy about it. I'm not saying that I'm happy about Hillary's ascendancy. But this is where it all came down to what, in all fairness, I've been saying it would always come down to.
So why did you think that? Why did you think that it would always come down to Hillary Clinton beating Bernie Sanders?
I don't want to be like prejudiced, but I just didn't see a way that an old Jewish socialist from the northeastern states was going to be able to beat the the Democratic establishment. I didn't see a way for him to get to victory. I think this is the moment at which we have to recognize that while his ideas have resonated, and I think they're very important. And I think that at some point in the future, I hope that the Democratic Party is going to be able to figure out how to take those and put them in a figure that's more appealing than him. There's no way that he was going to be able to win a general election. And I think most people have kind of gone the prudent method. And although I have a lot of problems with Hillary, they have taken, I think, the safer choice.
So let me challenge that on a couple of fronts. So first off, you know, I've got to say he was doing much better than Hillary Clinton in every single poll against Republicans.
So
it's not a matter of
on
debating it. I'm
point,
curious about your position.
I really do think, Cenk, that any kind of poll that puts a Democrat against a Republican right now is completely ridiculous. I mean, the Koch brothers have hundreds of billions of dollars in the tank, which they're going to put against any Democratic candidate. Hillary has already weathered every single possible storm. I am not a Hillary shill, but there is nothing that you can throw at Hillary that has not already been thrown. Bernie has been completely inured from all of those kinds of attacks. I mean, can you imagine what it would sound like in a general election campaign for a man who demonstrates that he is a democratic socialist? I mean, it would be like, well, the United States is going to turn into Cuba. We're going to turn it into, he's going to destroy the entire economy. The whole thing's going to go to hell because we're going to have a socialist president. We haven't heard any of that yet because they've been holding their fire. Jeez. So I really don't think that it's relevant to talk about, general election matchups between Bernie and the right and Hillary and the right. Hillary has been destroyed throughout her entire life. Bernie has never been attacked.
But Josh, I mean, I watch television. I didn't want to, but I had to watch the debates in the town halls and all that stuff. Almost every single debate in town hall, and sometimes several times a night, they'd ask Bernie about being a socialist. They compared him to Castro. They compared him to Hugo Chavez.
In a very pleasant way. I mean, in the kind of intellectualized way that we talk about and that you have on your show, but not in the kind of...
Jose Diaz-Balart said, why shouldn't Latinos assume that you're a dictator or dictator supporter, since you're a socialist like Castro and Chavez? There was nothing pleasant about that. And
but Cenk, come on, I'm hosting Sirius XM Radio at the moment. I was talking to Jonathan Alter this morning, and I think he made a really good point, which is that the kind of sphere of influence that we're talking about, and I know that a lot of people are going to say that Jonathan Alter is not someone to be listened to, but the kind of sphere of influence that we're talking about.
Hold on.
The number of people who watch cable news is about 10 million people. The number of people who vote in primaries is about 30 million people. The number of people who vote in general elections is 130 million people. These are just people who are not going to be focused on the kinds of things that we're talking about. So I think we need to understand that if Bernie had been the nominee, there would have been enormous attack ads that would have had nothing to do with you and your, someone asked him in a debate about something about being a socialist. These are people who are low information voters, the people who decide elections, who are in the middle of they're neither right wing nor left wing, they're people in the middle, and they broadly would be susceptible to fear campaigns about Bernie being a radical socialist who's going to destroy the American economy. I don't think you can get around that.
I think one of the things that really appeals to voters about Trump, as sad as it is the fact that he keeps talking about how anti-establishment he is and how he's not funded by these major corporations, he's self-funded. And I think that that is definitely going to be a line of attack that Trump is going to use against Hillary, who, of course, is funded a great deal by these corporations, right? And does have a huge influence on her policymaking. And so when you're talking about attack ads, wouldn't you argue that Hillary is going to be up against more serious attack ads made by Trump, as opposed to Bernie, who took small donations, who was obviously fighting for the people, who he himself was anti-establishment?
Yes, but I'm not talking about where people got their money from. I'm talking about scare campaigns about what someone's going to do to the economy. So I think Hillary is such a sort of feature of the political establishment that it's easy to say that she is the most reliable, dependable pair of hands to guide the economy into the future. I think it would have been easy for the Republicans to launch a campaign against Bernie Sanders saying he wants to give college to everybody. He wants to just give free healthcare to everybody. He doesn't even understand the economy. He's a socialist.
Yeah.
And that word that still resonates with a lot of Americans.
Free healthcare and college would be disastrous. Most Americans are against that.
Yeah. So, I don't think it's really about what the particular policies are. I really think it's about the way that each candidate can sell themselves. And I am exhausted by Hillary. I think Hillary is just such a boring, dull, uninteresting candidate. And I can't wait for the day when the Democrats are able to nominate somebody who has the vision and the decency of Bernie Sanders, who is 42 years old and has blonde hair and blue eyes and looks charming. But I never saw an ability for an old Jew from the Northeast to be able to do this. And that's just where I differed with you guys. And I think that today should not be a day of mourning, and it should not be a day of triumph. It should be a day of recognizing that hopefully the Democratic Party's center of balance has shifted a little bit, and I hope in a better way. And if we have to eat Hillary for a few years, then we'll do it. But it'd be nice if beyond that there was something better.
So, Josh, of course, we can debate this all night long, and I don't want to. I wanted to get your sense of perspective on it, right? So,
Sure.
I can go back to, but, we have evidence, and the other side doesn't in terms of the polling. You can say it's irrelevant, but at least it's facts. But, I can give you 1,000 different arguments. But I'm curious about the last thing you said, again, to gain your perspective on it. So if you've got some problems with Hillary Clinton, do you think a real progressive that has the ideas of Bernie Sanders can win next time? And let's assume she wins the presidency. Let's assume you're right, that the American people are thirsting for more establishment and they feel comforted by Hillary Clinton, and so they'll vote for her. And maybe that's true because of the monster on the other side, Donald Trump. I think the American people are tired of the establishment. I'm really afraid of Hillary Clinton's chances in the general election. But let's say I'm wrong about that. So would you support a real progressive, given, if he's the right kind of guy, et cetera, running a primary against Hillary Clinton in 2020? Or how do you see it playing out where we actually finally get to a progressive?
Well, mate, I'm an Australian, so I come from a country where the center of gravity politically is a lot further to the left than it is in the United States. I mean, even the Conservative Party in Australia regards universal healthcare as being just obviously something that, I have a Medicare card, right? I have a Medicare card. Everyone in Australia has a Medicare card. So for me, if you're asking my own personal opinion, I think it's ridiculous that the United States is still styred in these kind of ridiculous arguments with itself about whether or not it can achieve the same thing that all of these other countries in the Western developed world have been able to achieve: universal healthcare, affordable tertiary education, affordable universities. For me, it's a no-brainer. But I'm operating in the world in which I live. I've lived in New York City for more than 10 years. I understand the political system here. And I think that things have to be done incrementally. If you're asking what happens after Hillary, then I would have to say that I hope that we get somebody who's a bit more aggressive about progressive values, but is not quite so frightening to middle America as Bernie Sanders is. I don't want the incrementalism of Hillary, but I also don't want the scariness, the vulnerability to right-wing attacks that Bernie Sanders had.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's doomed him in this primary.
Josh, I really fundamentally disagree with that. And it's not a matter of ideology. And like you say, I bet you if we went issue by issue, we agree probably a startling amount. I'm not sure what we would disagree on, right? And so it's just a matter of how you get there and the different visions for that. But the part I'm disagreeing with here is I actually think that Bernie Sanders did well because it was so obvious that he was not a studied politician, that he was not a 42-year-old blonde guy with blue eyes. Because, by the way, we had a studied politician like that who had very similar positions. His name was Martin O'Malley, and he got pulverized because people sensed bullshit from him. Whereas they look at Bernie Sanders and they go, "Well, that guy's real. There's no question about that."
Cenk, I think you're onto something there, but I don't think it has as much to do with policy as you think it does. I think it has to do with temperament, which I think you're also pointing to. But doesn't that also sort of mean? I mean, I've long said that Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump are not entirely dissimilar in what they're tapping into, and I don't in any way want to be misunderstood that they're equivalent or that their policies are similar. But I think there is a sense. I was back in Australia recently, and I was on a panel show, and I was talking about this, and there was a lot of resonance with this in Australia as well, which is there's a sense that people are being lied to. There's a sense that there is a cabal between Wall Street and Washington, and in Australia, and that people really don't have a say anymore, and people are really striving for something that feels different, that feels like someone is not talking the pre-packaged language of the political elites, that is not subscribing to the same shit you hear all the time from everybody you could possibly vote for. And Donald Trump I actually don't think Donald Trump is successful because of his policies. I think he's successful because he's tapping into a sense of just exhaustion with the political process. Hillary Clinton, while she was on the campaign trail, was at an ice cream shop, and she was asked what her favorite ice cream flavor was. And she could not answer because she was afraid of offending someone who likes chocolate or vanilla or strawberry. People are exhausted by that. People are exhausted by this kind of manipulation of the political system. People want something that's fresh, and Trump is fresh and Bernie is fresh. They're fresh in different ways, and I'm not saying they're morally equivalent, but I think you're sort of tapping into something, which is it's not really about the policies. It's about the person. It's about the vibe.
Josh, it's good to talk to you again. I was a guest on your show not too long ago, and it's nice to hear that we agree on all the policies. The only thing I do disagree with is your analysis of Bernie Sanders and his ability to win in a general. Is that, when you say, I don't think an old Jew from the Northeast, and you know what? I don't think anybody would have said in 2006 that a black guy with a Muslim name could win the presidency either until he did it. Everybody says you can't do it till you do it. And Bernie Sanders is coming way, way, way closer. In fact, he's getting 30,000 people to show up at a time at a clip to come hear him speak. He's everybody under 45 in the Democratic Party wants to vote for him. And when you say he would get obliterated by the Koch brothers, he's been getting pounded on by the media every time. He's getting even places like Vox and Salon.com, they've been shitting on him for constantly, and he's still made up 60 points in the polls.
Jimmy, that's a good point. It's kind of a good point. It's not a very good point. Hillary is further ahead of Bernie than Obama was to Hillary at the same stage, right? So, even forgetting anything apart from numbers, already, the Obama phenomenon back at this stage in that campaign was far bigger than the Hillary campaign is right now. Also, I would just say that, although people would have said that a black person could never have become the president, there was something genuinely electrifying about Obama, and he was quite centrist and unifying. Just remember what Obama did. He got famous in 2004 when he gave that speech at the Democratic National Convention. And his speech, which he then continued through all of his campaigns, was, there is no blue America, there is no red America. It's just the United States of America. We should all come together. And this was in an era of the Iraq War. It was in an era of divisiveness. It was in an era of George W. Bush. And what he was really trying to do was say, we are a unified country and let's just heal ourselves. Bernie's message is a little bit different. So I take your point that it is also a fringe message, but it's more of a message of class warfare. It's more of a message of, like, let's take back the country. It's just a very politicized message in a way that Obama's was not. Obama's was not an overt let's tax the rich message. It was, let's heal ourselves after 8 years of this buffoon in the White House.
Disagree that that's what his message was. I also disagree that in the general, because Bernie Sanders cleans it up with independents. So that's why he would do even better, which is why he's polling even better. So independents love Bernie Sanders. So, I mean, saying that he doesn't, you're just denying reality if you say that he doesn't do better with independents. He does do better with independents. So you're just denying reality right there. And, you know, Barack Obama ran to the left. He ran to the left of Hillary Clinton in 2008. So to say he was a centrist, he wasn't. Hillary Clinton ran to the right of him in 2008. He ran to the left. People did think he was Bernie Sanders in 2008. They thought he was exactly what he's not. They thought Bernie Sanders is the real Barack Obama from 2008. So I disagree 100% with your framing.
Was he offering universal health care? Jimmy, I'm not saying.
Yes, he was offering it. Yes, he was offering universal health care, Josh. That's what Obamacare is supposed to be. He wasn't ordering. That's not Medicare, but he considers that a universal health care. So that's the difference. So you're wrong there too.
I mean, please. I mean, that's ridiculous. Bernie is offering a healthcare plan that not only has no chance of getting through any kind of Congress, even a Congress that had a filibuster-proof majority.
Not what I'm saying.
If Democrats had 60 seats in the Senate and a majority in the House of Representatives, there's no way that Bernie Sanders would get his universal Medicare plan for all through.
Okay.
What Obama ran on was a very prudent campaign. And you're right that independents do favor Bernie Sanders. But you're wrong to assume that independents are actually independent. You only have to look at all of the good work that the people at the Upshot at the New York Times and Ezra Klein and a whole bunch of people have done about research into people who call themselves independent. People who call themselves independent are usually more partisan than people who are actual partisans. What they are people who are dissatisfied with their political party, so they call themselves independent. But they're not actually independent. So Bernie can have all the independence he wants. What they actually are people on the very, very, very far left of the Democratic Party.
Okay, I have to comment on a few things. So first thing is how Barack Obama campaigned. I remember that campaign vividly. And the whole point of his campaign was hope and change. Things were fucked up, and he realized that. And so he did not present himself as a centrist at all. He presented himself as a progressive, and that was the message that appealed to voters. So one of the arguments that I hear against Bernie Sanders is, well, Obama presented himself as a progressive, and then he turned his back on us. How do we know that Bernie's not going to do the same thing? And so, look, a lot of young voters especially feel like they got hoodwinked by Obama, and that's exactly what happened. He ended up being the status quo, essentially. Now, and also he did say that he was going to offer universal health care, and that obviously didn't happen. Now, what I also find interesting is, in the same interview, you said, I find it ridiculous that the United States doesn't have universal health care yet. And then you say, well, Bernie Sanders wanted universal health care. That's not realistic. He's not going to get it done. So I don't really know. Which one is it?
So two things. I mean, none of those things are inconsistent, right? So I can believe that that universal health care is the best policy, and I can also believe that there's no way that it's going to get through an American Congress.
Not with that attitude.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not the emperor of the world, Anna. I don't get to choose how your system is set up and what people vote for.
But Josh, I'm going to jump in here.
With Congress the way it is, universal health care universal Medicare is not going to get through.
Because I don't mean to cut you off, but look, that Anna said something snarky there, but there's truth in it though, because when Barack Obama had an unassailable majority in the Senate and the House, he actually could have pushed whatever he wanted, and he could have gotten it done.
No,
he just lacked the imagination. He's like, I don't know, I'll throw away the public option in the hopes that Republicans will vote for me, and he didn't get a single Republican vote. He was wrong.
Cenk, this is the typical fantasy of the left that if only Obama had been more true to his own values, he would have been able to do all kinds of things that we wish he had
But he had
done.
a filibuster
The
proof
reality
majority.
is he had to strong arm even Democrats into getting this shitty policy that he ended up putting through. I'm no huge fan of Obamacare. It's better than what we had. It's nowhere near as good as what we could have. But do you seriously think that if there was an honest opportunity to provide Medicare for all, that he simply neglected that? Do you think he's so stupid he wouldn't have done it?
I have a very definitive answer to that question.
He had to.
Yes.
He's
not
got
a progressive.
Every vote he possibly
Josh,
could.
get it through your head.
He got
He's
every
an
vote he possibly
establishment
could.
status quo dude. When the change placards were lies. So no.
It's so easy. It's so easy from the sidelines, isn't it, to say what should have been done?
I'm
the
not
reality
on the
is they got the
sidelines.
best deal
Josh,
they could have
here,
got.
I'll give you an example of
that's
how I'm not on the
deal that
sidelines.
was on the table.
Josh.
There's no way that you're going to get. So Bernie comes into power. And you've got a majority of Republicans in the House. And you've maybe got
those
a
Republicans
majority
would
of
love
Democrats
Hillary
in the
Clinton.
Senate, but you certainly don't have a filibuster-proof majority.
Yeah, those Republicans would work with Hillary Clinton, right? They'd be like, "Oh, here's your progressive change."
More than
They impeached Bill Clinton over a fucking blowjob after he handed them deregulation of Wall Street. They still impeached Bill Clinton over a blowjob, but they're going to work with Hillary Clinton. That is batshit bullshit, backwards, fucked up establishment
Jimmy,
rationale that is so fucking full of shit. That is so ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
Give him a chance.
Well, who's
Sorry,
saying
Josh.
that?
What?
Who's saying that?
No,
I'm
but
not saying
Josh,
that they're
he's
gonna work
pointing
with
out. He's pointing out that you say they'd fight Bernie, but of course they'd fight Hillary too. They'd fight her tooth and nail.
Absolutely.
So what's the difference?
Ridiculous.
At least one of them would try, and the other one wouldn't.
Yes, they are going to oppose anything that a Democrat tries to propose. What I'm saying is, you have to be a little bit realistic about what could possibly get through. And if we're talking about what you actually want to happen rather than up high in the sky kind of ideal, then you have to think about, well, okay, what's the reality on the ground? What is Congress looking like? What is the House of Representatives looking like? What is the Senate looking like? And what do I think can actually happen? If I could wave a magic wand, then of course I'd have Bernie Sanders. Of course, I mean, I'd have a pixie, and she'd come down and scatter fairy dust across all of us. The reality is, I'm not saying that Hillary is going to get things done that Bernie couldn't get things done. All I'm saying is neither of them are going to get anything done, so there's no point in talking about the competition between Bernie's healthcare plan and Hillary's healthcare plan. All I'm saying is Obama got the best deal that he was able to get, and he twisted some arms, and he knows how the system works, and we sit here on the sidelines and say, well, yeah, the public option, I wish he'd gotten like a Medicare for all, and that's easy, but he did something. And who's going to do something? I don't know. Maybe not Hillary, maybe not Bernie. But Josh, I don't think you can take Bernie at face value and say that, he's just going to give us...
All right, last thing. Look, you say on the sidelines. So first off, there's the policy issues. I said he shouldn't do offshore drilling 3 weeks before the disaster that happened in the Gulf of Mexico. So... now, you can say, oh, you got lucky, or you can say, oh, it's easy to say. No, I thought it was a bad idea, and I was right, and Barack Obama was wrong. I could go on and give you about a dozen examples. That's not being on the sidelines. That's just being right, okay? And so why did he do it? Did he have to do more offshore drilling in the Gulf? No, he didn't have to do it. But he thought, oh, let's make the status quo happy. I'm an establishment guy, and they'll yell at me if I don't do more offshore drilling. They won't make as much money, and I won't get as many donations, and so I'm going to do it. Now, we didn't say it in hindsight, and I say this on the show all the time. I say it ahead of time. So if I'm proven wrong, then I'm proven wrong. But it hardly ever happens because the establishment always does the thing that is to the benefit of the donors and the rich and the elite, and we're supposed to sit here and take it. Well, that brings me to point number 2. But Josh, this whole idea of, I've heard everything you've ever said against what we did here, right? So I know it's different, and it's maybe not a fair analogy because politics is different than the media. But I heard, don't be an idiot. Stay on Sirius Satellite Radio. You'll never make it on online, right? Don't be an idiot. Stay at MSNBC. What are you going to do online? That's fairy dust. There's no people online. You're never going to get anything. You don't have any resources. You don't have the establishment on your side. And here we are at about 3.7 billion views. So in my life, I have seen that things that are called impossible or even improbable are actually enormously doable. So maybe it's not a great analogy, but in my life, if you try, you'd be amazed at what you could accomplish. So I think what you're hearing from us, and I love this exchange of perspectives, even if we disagree, is that we think, let's try. Because if you don't try, I know what you're going to get. You're going to get the same old establishment that apparently you and I both agree isn't serving us well. So why would I stick with something I know sucks rather than trying to get something better?
Cenk, I love your show and I love you, and I have absorbed everything that you have just said in my own life. I mean, I currently have a podcast. I used to work at HuffPost Live. We got 3 billion video views in less than 3 years. And I've now gone off and created my own podcast, We the People Live, in exactly the same kind of aspiration. And it's working. So this is not a question about should we be aspirational or should we be boring? I'm not coming on here to say, let's just be boring and let's not think about things and let's be as dull as we possibly can. What I'm saying is aspiration requires some kind of evidence that you're actually going to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. And I take your point. Yeah, it is fairy dust what you've done, and it's fairy dust what I've done, and it's fairy dust that we can live in the 21st century and have conversations with each other about things that are important and actually earn money from doing that. I mean, this is an extraordinary medium, and it's an amazing thing that we're doing. But what voters care about, what people in the heartland of America care about, is whether or not they have jobs, is whether or not they have an income, whether or not they can send their kids to college, whether or not they have health care. And those things are not done by fairy dust. Like sometimes there are people who promise fairy dust with good reasons to, and I would absolutely follow such a person to the end of the earth. But if someone comes along and has unrealistic propositions, and I don't think that they are actually going to get the number of electoral college votes that are necessary for them to become president, I'm not going to back them simply because of fairy dust.
Okay.
I backed my media opportunities on the basis of a realistic expectation that they would work, and they have. And you did, and they have. Bernie's didn't.
Okay.
And they weren't going to.
I'm going to let you have the last word on it, Josh. I really, really appreciate you coming on. Really appreciate your perspective because it gives us a different view. Where you can tell we're all pro Bernie here. So it was good to get your point of view.
I love you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, everybody check out We the People Live. That's Josh's podcast. Thanks, Josh.
You got it.